we jump in, first of all, to all the podcast listeners, thank you for joining us. Be sure to subscribe, hit that 5-star review, let them know what the deal is so we can keep them sponsors coming through. We're going to talk a little bit later in the show about the future of the INNERGEEKDOM show because we've got some pretty big changes coming, some exciting changes. I'm very, very geeked out to share that with you for sure. But let's start off, of course, by introducing my engineer extraordinaire, the one, the only. I'm muted. What? Oh, better now. Okay. I don't know how much you heard. Long story short, welcome to the INNERGEEKDOM show. Spoiler alert. INNERGEEKDOM show is going to be changed a little bit. We'll talk about that later in the episode. We're going to talk episode 3 of Loki. Shout out to the podcast listeners. And now introducing my engineer extraordinaire, Mr. Dwain Burke. Dwain, what's good, bro? All good. Appreciate the love and y'all letting us know. But Dwain is on top of it, so we all good, baby. Now, the personal issue that we had going on. Our guest today was supposed to be none other than Craig the Barbarian. Unfortunately, he's got something going on in his apartment right now that he's trying to solve. I'm not going to put his business out there in the streets. He's just got a little bit of an emergency in his building. So if he is able to sort it out, he will join us later in the episode to kind of pick up where we're talking and give his thoughts on what's going on. Otherwise, it's just going to be me and Dwain this morning. And, obviously Craig is a friend of the show, so we will have him on one way or the other. Hopefully it's today. We'll see. But let's just jump right into it. Let's talk about it because I do want to spend enough time to discuss what's happening with our show, with the INNERGEEKDOM show in the next week or two. So this episode titled Lamentis, I'll be real with you, Dwain, just opening thoughts. They said you were muted now. I don't know if you're good.
It's good.
Good. Just checking. All right, cool. Not my favorite episode. I had moments in it that I thought were beautiful, that I thought were hilarious, that I thought did give us a little bit more of a dive into both Loki and Sylvie, as we found out that she wants to be referred to. I mean, for those of us that did our dive in the credits last week, because we were all like, oh, is it the Enchantress? She was credited as Sylvie, but now she's actually said it out loud. I thought we got really nice moments with that, and even their connection and a further dive into who Loki really is, like what makes a Loki comes up at one point. But it didn't move the needle for me, man. I'll be honest with you. I felt a little disconnected from the same kind of flow that we had last 2 episodes. I like the fact that we kept having little moments in like time or history that were affected by Loki or the TVA. So like the DB Cooper in episode 1, Pompeii in episode 2, even though he didn't really affect it, going to Pompeii and having that moment, was kind of cool. So I get, because you're on Lamentis and the ideas that you're trapped there, you're not going to get that as much. I will say the poor people waiting for the train kind of reminded me of very a la Titanic, of being like, come on, you're letting the rich people on the boats. What the hell? Like, I got that vibe. So if you want to maybe make that comparison, but just really, honestly, not my favorite. I think even of all 3 of the shows now, so WandaVision, Falcon Winter Soldier, and this might be like in my top 2 or 3 episodes of the 3 shows personally. Again, still got a lot out of it, but just not really there for me. What about you, Dwain?
I understand why a lot of people are saying this is like a filler episode, or like it's not like it doesn't live up to the first 2 or whatever. But I think that the questions that come up in this episode are some of the most important questions that we've been asked or are asking ourselves so far through the series. Like, what makes a Loki is an incredibly like poignant question, because it's not just about like Loki the character, but it's also like a self-reflection of like, okay, so like what makes me me? And
Yes.
like there were a lot of things in in this show in particular that people were like talking about, like, okay, are they ever gonna like explicitly say that, like, or address Loki's sexuality or Loki's gender or
Sure.
any of those things? And I think that they did that in this episode in a way that was so subtle but still so overt.
Hmm.
um like, I think if people can wrap like, and I don't want to like get into this wider conversation, but if people can understand that Sylvie is a Loki, and Sylvie may have at one point looked exactly like Tom Hiddleston, but understand now that she looks the way that she looks and is still a Loki, but is now known as Sophie or Sylvie. How do you not understand that in real life?
I mean, that's a solid point.
Like,
That is a very,
like,
very solid point.
but it made that point without like saying like, you see the point that I'm making? Like, it just
Right.
made it.
Right.
Even when it addressed Loki's sexuality, and he was like, a bit of both.
Yeah, right. When she
Like, and
asks,
that's
you're
it.
a prince. Is there a waiting princess or princes, or that you might? He was like a little of both, but nothing ever really stuck. Those moments. Don't get me wrong. Those moments that when we were diving further into what makes Loki a Loki, and these two back and forth, and how their powers developed, and what family they were raised with, and all that, that stuff was great. The reason why I think it didn't hit for me as well, and why people are calling it a filler episode, all of that is still important. Like a lot of, I think of like Naruto, for example, because they're infamous for having infinite filler episodes. Naruto and One Piece. I don't watch One Piece, but I've heard that too. Those were always then stories that you might have gotten something more about a character, like say Naruto or Kakashi or whatever, but it didn't move the story forward. And that's my problem here, is we did not get the story moving forward. So while I appreciate everything that we got from the characters and from the themes, I just didn't feel like we didn't have any, like, if there was something that was like, oh, we find out that Lamentis is like a massive key to the sacred timeline or something, you know what I'm saying? That would be different. We're literally on a planet that has no repercussions whatsoever, except for the fact that if we don't get off this rock in the next 12 hours, we're going to die. So you know what I'm saying? So that's where I'm kind of like,
I mean,
you
I
could
think
have had these conversations, but then something was moving forward where maybe we find out Sylvie's plan as to why she's trying to destroy the sacred timeline, or what, you know what I mean?
I mean, I don't think that moves the story. Like, I don't think that's the right way to say that the story didn't move forward, because I think the story did move forward. I think we got a massive piece of information in the revelation that something that I already kind of knew just because of the knowledge that I was bringing into it, but that the
Mm-hmm.
TVA is entirely made up of variants that don't
Well,
know that they're
yes.
variants. That moves
Yes.
the story forward incredibly,
In the sense
because
that we know now that the timekeepers in the TVA, which we all kind of had a hunch, but are not who they seem to be. I agree with that. But that was such a small nugget, almost kind of thrown away at the end, that it doesn't have like necessarily the same impact of, like, again, the first episode is Loki literally is arrested by the TVA, so it's just figuring out where the fuck we are in the first place. Then the second episode is the beginning of this manhunt for Sylvie, and so we're moving forward as far as like what are we actually doing here. I'm saying that, like, sure, they got on the train, they tried to get on the ark, but nothing, it has nothing really to do with anything else. And so getting that little nugget about the variants is great. You still could have gotten that while doing something. You know what I'm
I
saying?
think that
Like,
but further doing deeping and diving into the characters is doing something. Something doesn't always have to happen in the larger world to
sure.
say that the story is moving forward. Like, the story did move forward because like now we've gotten into like um what Mobius said in the last episode, no one is ever truly bad and no one is ever truly good. And it's like
Right.
now we've gotten to see the part of Sylvie that the TVA is kind of pushing to the side. Like
Uh-oh.
maybe
Did I
we don't.
swear? Whoops.
You did.
Uh-oh. What did I say?
You
Well, don't
dropped
say
you
it, but
dropped
like,
an F bomb.
oh,
Yeah.
oh Lord. All right, my bad.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna point it out.
I just didn't even
But,
notice. We were so deep in the conversation, bro. I just
but like I think because if we don't have this episode where we kind of get to flush out Sylvie a little bit and get a little bit deeper into Sylvie, when we move into the next 3 episodes and Loki has to really start making decisions about whose side is he going to be on, as well as trying to get Mobius to pick a side. If we didn't have this episode, there won't be any impact when that happens later.
I hear you. I acknowledge that. I just look back to. I'm trying to think of what like a good example would be. I look back to the episode where we first get introduced to Isaiah in Falcon and Winter Soldier, and how that was a lot of like exposition and history of what's been going on and things like that, but still things were physically moving forward. That you see what I'm saying? You can do both. I think what I get nervous about, we only have 6 episodes of this show. So every minute, every scene is kind of vital. And again, diving into who Sylvie is and everything else, I think is wonderful. I think you can do both. That's my concern, is that the stuff built around the dive into Sylvie and Loki is not doing anything. So this center part, gold. That's the part of the episode I liked. It's everything around it that did nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like even the old, like other than the fact that maybe Lokis of every variety can get their butt whooped by anybody, and I think that was kind of the moment we get with the old lady and her gravity gun or air gun or whatever it is she's shooting out of that shed. So you see some of the similarities there where they're both F-ups. See, caught it that time. But we don't. There was nothing that made me be like, okay, cool. You know, I guess that's my main critique. And I feel like we hear each other, but we just feel differently about how that works, I guess.
Well, because like then my question would be, as with what we've been given so far, especially with the way that Sylvie has been characterized, if they weren't stuck on this planet with nowhere else to go, we wouldn't have gotten any of those conversations because they would have just went their separate ways.
You could still have them stuck in a moment
together.
You could still have them stuck in a moment where they have to, like, for example, if they're not that we need to necessarily explore the TVA more, but if they jump back into the TVA because Loki has interfered, now they somehow get captured and now they're trying to work together to escape. You know what I'm saying? Like they think because Loki, since he abandoned Mobius at
Rocksmart.
It was Walmart at Rocksmart. That could be something that's kind of like going on in that, or she dropped all of those reset charges into different points in time. What if because Loki was so hasty in hitting it, they're accidentally in that, and now we're either connected to something bigger in that regard or whatever. It's just that I guess the problem is that Lamentis has no implications on anything else other than this planet is about to be destroyed. That's it. That's the only thing. It has no other implications. So the location and what's happening in it has no bearing on anything. Their interactions do, but the actual planet and setting that we're in does not. And so that's the thing. It feels like wasted space in that regard. I think someone I see in the chat said it best. The filler argument above all else really depends on what happens next week. It's kind of hard to say, like when you just see its face on, that is what it's going to present itself as. But depending on what happens next week, if all of a sudden we find out that Lamentus is where, Kang actually has been hanging out for a while because he also realizes he can hide inside it. Like, and then all of a sudden we get introduced to Kang. Like, whatever it is, there could be something that has to do with this planet or this setting later. Great. But other than that, that's kind of where my brain's at.
I think, and I don't know of a better way to say this. This is just the way it that mentality frustrates the hell out of me because it's the same reason that we got Luke Skywalker at the end of The Mandalorian. Everything doesn't have to be connected to everything. Some things can just stand alone. And
yes,
Lamentus doesn't have to have bigger implications. I think and this is kind of my own expectations playing through the episode as we were going through it. And I think it was the plan. They didn't ever really quite explicitly say it, but they were going to get the Ark off the planet because that would have created a Nexus event.
Right.
And it would have forced the TVA to come get them.
Yes.
They still have to get off this planet somehow.
Yes.
And we know that there's 3 more episodes, so they are going to get off the planet.
Yes.
So what are
they have to. With 3 episodes left, they have to escape. Yes.
Exactly. So at this point, what are they gonna do that's gonna be big enough to cause a Nexus event, and in the face of an apocalypse?
Fair.
So
yes.
So I'm super excited about next episode because they're like subverting everything that they set up in the first 2 by saying like, hey, if you go to an apocalypse, everything that you do won't matter. And now with this episode and knowing that they're going to survive, they're going to show you that wasn't true.
Yeah.
What you do does matter, even in the face of an apocalypse.
No, fair. Just got word that Craig is sorting it out and he will join us momentarily, so that's great. Yeah, I get that. I feel like I mean we've kind of talked circles around this particular topic about whether it was filler or not. But I think, again, the one thing that I do appreciate is that we were able to have this Discord with, one, we're friends, so we would be able to do that anyway. But that, because how people on there, F you, dog, you know what you're talking about, blah, 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 this is why you're trash. This is what real discourse looks like, people. You can feel differently about, a creative art or a work and still, be cool. You know what I'm saying? And still have things you like or hate about the episode. One could be at a 10 and one could be at a 6. It's fine. It's how life works. That's how it should work. Anyways, so I want to talk about specifically the there was a nice conversation about love. And they were debating what love really was for a while, that love was mischief. I don't remember what the second thing that they call it as, but I do remember Loki gave a small little drunken poem where he ultimately says to Sylvie, he goes, you know what, I figured it out while you were passed out. Love is a dagger. It's a weapon to be wielded far away or up close. You can see yourself in it and it's beautiful until it makes you bleed. But ultimately, when you reach for it, it isn't real.
See, he almost had it. Almost had it. If he would have said, when you reach for it, you'll find that when you need it, it's out of reach, he would have had it.
Because that was where Sylvie called him out. She was like, so love is an imaginary dagger. Yeah. And he goes, I messed it up. I had something there. I didn't really quite get it. But everything prior to that. So the fact that it can be used up close or far away, this idea that you can affect somebody with love. I think about, for example, people love, I don't know, Samuel L. Jackson, right? They're massive fans of Samuel L. Jackson. You have never met Samuel L. Jackson in your life, I would bet, for most of those people that love Samuel L. Jackson, but you can love him and his work and what he stands for from afar. Then you can also have the type of love that like we have as like homies that we've known each other the last couple of years. We've got a chance to like get to know each other and we've become friends. And the idea of that, let alone the intimate love of like you meet a partner and you get to know each other like that. And then the fact that you say, like, again, you see yourself in it. Love shows you who you are and it shows you what you're made of and things like that. And it is beautiful. And like he then says, until it makes you bleed. The minute love, there is a betrayal or there is a letdown or whatever, it is one of the most painful things in the world. Um, what did you think about this particular moment, Dwayne?
I I think that this moment showed, even with all their differences, how similar Loki and Sylvie really are. Like
Mhm.
they aren't different. Like as much as Sylvie doesn't want to be a Loki, like she is. They and it kind of shows that like even with all of the differences, there's still a through line through all timelines with
Mhm.
Loki. Like
Mhm.
there, because even like later when he's like, "You can't blame me. I'm hedonistic," and she's like, "No,
So
I'm
am I,
hedonistic."
more
Like,
so than you.
yeah,
Like,
and she was like, "Even more than you," and it's like there's still like these things that are character traits that aren't going to change no matter what.
right. Right. No, that I agree with and I do appreciate as well. Um, and I even like the idea that like by giving us the Enchantress as like a Loki variant, I know I've seen some people that are pissed off about it, like, no, there has to be something else to it. Like there has to be, this really is just the Enchantress off to the side, like whatever. And I'm like, you do realize that the MCU in and of itself is kind of its own multiverse, its own variant, and that the comic way that you see stuff, let alone that in all the universes we've seen in the comics, because at one point we had the Ultimate universe and all that other stuff, there are going to be little changes, and we've already seen them as we've seen the movies based off of things having to work the way that they are. So, like Civil War, for example, Civil War was a massive event that included the X-Men and the Fantastic Four and the Defenders and everybody, but you couldn't do that because you didn't have the rights to all of those characters. So the idea of Civil War and the Sokovia Accords looked very different than the Superhero Registration Act. So it's very natural for this stuff to be the same but different. And I appreciate that they found a way to incorporate this character in a way that works. You know what I'm saying? By finding a thread that kind of works, and that's the big thing. Um, Again, the MCU is not I see Tiffany just said it. It's not a one for one um, comparison to the comics. They do need to be similar because otherwise, what are we looking at here?
Well,
But they're not going to match directly.
and it's not just that. So it used to be that um you had Earth 616 that
Mhm.
was like the main Marvel Comics timeline, and then the MCU was actually Earth, what, like 99999, I think is what its
I think
designation
so.
was. Well, like I think it was like a year or two ago, Kevin Feige basically just said, "Hey, um that's no longer true. The MCU is its own thing and it has its own Earth designation and
Mm-hmm.
then branches off of that. And then the
Mm-hmm.
comics are completely separate and they have all their different Earths and designations. So, like, now the multiverse can, like, so the MCU multiverse is completely separate from the comic multiverse,
Right.
and like they are no longer separate. They're like parallel multiverses
Right.
traveling side by side, um, which is kind of how they played that out by saying like this is the creation of the multiverse in the MCU. Like that's why they had to make that delineation, because otherwise people were like, "Oh, well, like the multiverse exists, so how are you going to create a multiverse in a multiverse?"
Right.
Um, but even with that, like they've already shown that they're willing to change certain things about characters from the comics. Like one of my big sticking points with WandaVision was the difference between Agatha Harkness in WandaVision and Agatha Harkness
Right.
characterization in the
Right.
comics.
Right.
I was a little annoyed that they kind of changed her base character somewhat.
Into more of a straight up villain.
Yeah, like I don't have a problem with changing little things, like, whether it's not whitewashing, but like race bending or gender bending or anything, like I don't really have problems with that. I don't care. But when
Yeah.
you change something that I think is kind of like fundamental to the character,
Right.
that kind of doesn't, like, it doesn't work for me.
Right.
Like if someone was to say, "Hey, like Magneto's no longer going to be Jewish," I'm like, you just changed a fundamental part of that character.
Right.
Like,
Right.
that's
Right.
not,
Right. Right.
like, we can't do that. Like that
No.
like parts of the character still have to ring true, and the fundamentals still have to.
Well, and that's I think why. Which, by the way, I don't know if you saw that Craig is in the waiting room. If you can grab him real quick,
Yep.
but from the standpoint of, I agree with you. I think that that's why, for example, if we are getting a Loki Enchantress variant for True, this isn't Sylvie is just the Enchantress as she is, and it really is a variant of Loki. I don't think that there's a problem with that, simply from the standpoint of that it would still work within a Loki's nature, since Loki is the god of mischief and the Enchantress is up to her own mischief as is. That would make perfect sense. All right, so with all that, we're about halfway through the show. I want to make sure we get your Streamlabs and Super Chats in there too. Please keep sending them in, your thoughts about the episode, your thoughts about all the stuff Dwayne and I have discussed. But he is here. He is one of the leaders of the Finstock Exchange. He is not currently with Elvis, but that's fine, because instead he, or maybe he is, I don't know if he, nope, okay, no worries. But he is a brilliant mind in his own right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd love to welcome back to the show, Craig the Barbarian. What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing much better now, Winston. Forces conspired against me joining for this chat, but I have defeated those forces, and here we are. I'm excited to talk about Loki.
There you go. Did you leave a reset charge on your way out so that your apartment can go back to normal?
Yes, exactly. That timeline has been erased, and back to the regular timeline where nothing bad happened at all.
There you go, man. So real quick, I just wanted to say, what were your initial thoughts on this episode of Loki?
I enjoyed the episode. I did feel like it was more of a character building episode than so much as advancing the plot. But I think we did get some like small advancements of the plot while learning more about these characters and building their dynamic together.
So you essentially are the split of Dwayne and myself.
Oh.
I was kind of saying the same thing, but Dwayne loved it for the character building, and I enjoyed the character building, but I felt the same way that the story wasn't moving forward. And I think that that's a more apropos word to use, is instead of story, the plot. The plot didn't necessarily move forward. The story did. Yeah. I think that that's a better way to describe it for sure. We just talked about Loki's drunk poem about love being a dagger, which I thought was very beautiful. And we joked about how, just like Sylvie says, oh, you had it right there until the end. And, an imaginary dagger. What a crappy metaphor. What moments for you really stuck out in the episode?
I think one of the biggest moments that I think people will be talking about is the moment where they're talking about love, and they reveal Loki's bisexual nature. But then also what really struck me hearing them talk about love was that we've never actually seen Loki pursue any love other than the love of his parents up till now. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like a facet of his personality we've never really gotten a chance to see or explore. And I mean, it's because he's been, trying to his character and story has been more about, trying to, need to, get the validation of his parents. But what really struck me about that part of the story is that he's the one that brought the topic up to her. So
Right.
I'm curious. So it almost to me seems like, he in the episode's called Lamentus, so the word lament's right there, and it's almost like he is possibly lamenting the fact that he never pursued or found love, and
Mm-hmm.
is trying to see if this other version of him ever accomplished that. Would be maybe I'm reading a little bit much into that, but
No, I don't hate that
it's
idea.
yeah, I thought that was and depths of his personality that we have yet to see explored.
No, I agree. I actually find it interesting that the poem could directly be ascribed to his interactions with Selby. And it's not to say that he is all of a sudden in love with her right away, but with the idea that that she is a Loki herself.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like until he talks more about his mom, honestly, the only person that Loki has ever loved is himself.
Mm-hmm.
The poem almost fits where it's like, you see yourself in it. It's beautiful, until it makes you bleed. How many times have they already scrapped and tried to kill each other up to this point and whatnot?
Yeah.
The idea when you reach for it isn't real. The part that we joke, doesn't work. But if we're talking about variants and this idea of like, what of this is actually real? What of this is random splinters that don't actually ascribe to who I am and stuff like that? I think that there's a really interesting idea that we were getting a general poem about love and what it is, but we were also kind of getting Loki looking in at himself for a minute and what this even means to himself, because there's even this idea of self-love, because we've seen every episode Loki looking at who he is. He thinks he knows who he is. I'm Loki and I was burdened with glorious purpose.
Yeah.
And be like, no, your purpose was to literally make everybody else glorious. And him having to come to terms with that, and the fact that he's the reason his mother died, and that his father really did love him, and that he died at the hands of the Mad Titan because he just didn't get it together until it was too late type situation. I think that this is another moment that's very subtle, because we get a lot of bigger ones with his conversations with Selby, where he's having another introspective moment there, I feel like. I don't know if you and Dwain feel the same way about that or not, but that was one thing that I sort of caught out of this poem that I thought was interesting.
I mean, I definitely have been picking up on that this season in terms of just like the introspection and the, exactly what you said about, his purpose being to raise others up and just see, getting that perspective on seeing himself outside of the binds of what he'd seen. And, I definitely see how this poem relates to that.
Yeah, 1,000%. And the funny thing is, we even get a question from Selby at one point. Loki was like, you did XYZ. I would never do that. And she goes, well, one, I'm not you, but what makes Loki a Loki? And Loki responds, independence, authority, style, which I got to say, if that's all it takes, Sylvie's already shown that in spades. She came up with a brilliant master plan to blow up the sacred timeline. She has proven that she's not going to let the TVA do whatever they want to her. She's going to go up here and handle it if she has to. And then she's got the same kind of aesthetic as Loki does. And even the way in which she fights, the way in which she, uses magic. So like for Loki, it's a lot of like, Chris Angel mind freak, just like poof, it disappears, where she will straight up, like, I loved the little improvised moment getting on the train where he's like, we're gonna do it my way. He does his disguise thing, his like illusion disguise thing. Mm-hmm. And when it's just about to fail because his words aren't gonna work, she quickly taps the dude and does the enchantment, which I think was so much more brilliant when they tried before at the old lady's house. She's like, we're gonna do it my way. Doesn't work. We're gonna do it my way. Doesn't work. Yeah. Now that they work together, all of a sudden, this worked out perfectly.
Yeah, that is a great point, and it was a really fun moment in the story.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. I would have to. What did you think about the action in this episode? We got the initial fight with the guards of the TVA, and Sylvie went full Agent 13, Sharon Carter on their behinds.
What I love about that fight is it begins with her, trying to do her old tricks of, okay, I'm going to possess this person. she goes and tries to possess him, and immediately it's like, oh, well, first off, it tells us that she's never been inside the TVA and tried this before. And, so she, but once she learns that the magic didn't work, she very quickly became accustomed to that melt you stick or whatever they call those sticks that just like disintegrate people. She's like, oh, okay. But,
man, I mean, I guess I now that I think about it, I guess cops do have guns, but I was just like, yo, how Pete is this for this police force to just be able to just disintegrate people right away? And then I literally was like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. But what we have that we had that fight. We had the fight on the train, which I thought was pretty fun, especially with drunk Loki fighting, where he's just like, don't touch me. Just what are you? And like even throwing the dude out the window throwing the knife, almost hitting Sylvie in the face, and she was like, that was a terrible throw.
Yeah.
And then our last bit of action, we get the run for the Ark before it gets destroyed. So again, what did you think about these other two action scenes, man? Since it's a lot this particular episode.
Yeah, and first off, it's just the production value in these MCU TV shows is like film level production value. It's always impressive. Like you said, love the fight scene in the train with him throwing the guard out the window, then himself getting thrown out too. And then we've got the during that end chase scene, it just kept we also got just like some emotional beats in it in addition to the the action. Loki's looking around and they're going to abandon all these people. Like, this is Loki, who's grown from he just recently was pulling the eyeball out of somebody in Austria to being here and actually being concerned about the lives of human beings or lamentous beings, whatever they're people. But then it was chaotic and it was ever escalating until it just kind of ended with just like they ran into a wall.
No, for sure. Okay, so the one other thing that I wanted to talk about before we get to the super chats, we get this moment when they're running for the Ark, where Loki straight up catches a building and reassembles it. Yeah. And I understand that Loki's magic, there's a lot of stuff that we've been able to see him do. I don't ever feel like we've ever seen him reverse time.
So I'm going to say, I don't think he reversed time. I think that he just moved it. I think it was just a larger visual of his telekinesis that was shown in the last episode. I don't think that he actually reversed time.
Okay.
I would agree with that also, because if he has the ability to reverse time and didn't use that against Thanos, that would probably be a bad move. I think this is definitely more of the telekinesis, but it's also telekinesis to like a significant,
massive scale. That just power scaled the hell out of him. For him to do that so quickly and so effectively while on the run, that does a lot. The only reason I bring that up is, remember though, Loki being a trickster and a thief, we did get a bunch of paperweights of Infinity Stones. There's a possibility he pocketed one on the way out. So that was the only reason I brought that up, is because I was like, did
Yeah.
he potentially steal an Infinity Stone? Because he did take a moment to go get his daggers. So I don't think maybe he did it necessarily when he first saw that they were paperweights, but he knew where they were, and he knew the TVA was scrambling all over the place, that he could have real quick got his daggers and grabbed one of them before he bounced.
That's possible, but the problem with that is he would also have to be in the universe that those time stones came from.
That's true. I just was under the I was under that. Yes, I know that the Infinity Stones have to be from the particular universe that you're coming from. But considering, I guess, that these variants are these Nexus events are just starting to split off and whatnot, it's also a possibility that, like, remember, knowing the TVA nullifies all magic and whatnot, that it.
But if they brought it out of that branch, because those Infinity Stones would have come from so once it starts branching, that has now become a new timeline. So those Infinity Stones, once they get pulled out and that branch gets pruned, that timeline no longer exists. So you can't take those Infinity Stones back to the timeline that they came from. So there's no way for you to use them again.
So you're saying the Tesseract that Loki had, that he used to escape after that branch got pruned, that Tesseract, even though they still have it, is useless no matter which timeline he goes to.
You can't take it back into a timeline where the Tesseract is still there,
so
and use
can
it
have multiple
because
Tesseracts.
it's not the same Tesseract.
That's fair. The only thing that I'm wondering about this is we haven't had that direct discussion yet about the Infinity Stones not working outside of their universe. We know that from the comic lore. They haven't yet said that. They just said that inside the TVA, magic and whatnot doesn't work. Well, so that's the only thing.
To be fair, we wouldn't have that conversation because right now there is only one universe. There is only one timeline.
Also true. That's also true. All right, so let's get to these. We've got about 12 minutes left. Let's get to these Streamlabs and super chats that came in. See what people want to discuss.
I do have an interesting thing. I know we have the Streamlabs to get to. I do have an interesting thing to bring up that's not related to what we've discussed thus far. Is the moment that we talk about that every member of the TVA is a variant? Did you guys discuss that yet?
We touched on it a little bit. Yeah. But that was because that was, of course, the big plot moment in the episode is being like, wait a minute, not only was she human, and probably all of these cats are human, but that they're all variants and not just made by the Timekeepers, once again proving that the Timekeepers are a bunch of liars. And I don't know about you, but the Timekeepers, the middle one, 1,000% looks like Jonathan Majors. And I'm just like, that's Kang. That's Kang, bro.
Interesting. The reason I bring it up, so I've been having discussions the last couple of weeks, even leading up to this, about whether the nature of Mobius, the Owen Wilson's character, and how he seems like he could be a Loki variant himself. And I'm wondering, so this, in terms of just how well he knows Loki, how well he's able to manipulate Loki, like no one else has been. There's little hints that might be the case, and the fact that now we know that he actually is a variant. Maybe he is a Loki variant. But that's just it.
So I can't remember what show you were on, Winston, but I popped in the chat and brought this up. So I know I've said before that I thought maybe that the other consultant that Renslayer has been referring to might be Immortus. But now that they've done the reveal of the TVA being populated by variants, I think it is 100% going to be another variant of Mobius. And the reason that he doesn't remember leaving that ring on her coffee table is because he was not the one that did it. It was another version of him. And because in the comics, the middle management of the TVA is entirely made up of Mobius variants.
Wow.
Ooh.
Like, there's like hundreds of them that all work for the TVA.
Wow.
Well, damn. Didn't know about that. Did not know about that personally. So that actually could be super interesting and actually not totally surprising now that we know that they're all variants in one way or the other.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dwayne, go ahead and read them. What do we got, man?
All right, from Max Cohen. I felt like this episode tread water, started and ended stuck with no way home. Any info from Sylvie is unreliable, so it was 40 minutes of meh to find out TVA is stealing people.
I mean, you could say the same thing about Loki. Nothing that Loki says is reliable. So you can't, I don't think you can go off of that premise. You can kind of tell now when Loki is serious and when Loki is up to no good. I think we got past that level of up to no good pretty early on. And then when we actually sat down on the train and had the time to talk, it got real. That's just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, even if she isn't going to, even if she's, unreliable, she's still gonna. There's still likely a chance she's actually revealing her cards. Not like really like tipping her hand a little bit, like letting her guard down a little bit to to get through. So again, it's the plot itself didn't move forward a lot, but I still thought it was very enjoyable. Discovery of the characters one. And I do think that what we've learned, while there is going to be some deception learned, I do think what we saw was mostly genuine interaction.
Mm-hmm. I agree. What else we got, Dwayne?
John Lee. I think the TVA city might be in the quantum realm since all of their tech can allow them to time travel, and Kang would be or will be the villain in the next Ant-Man movie. Space and time work different in the quantum realm. I agree. I think the TVA is eventually going to become Chronopolis.
I think it'll probably be the Chronopolis as well. And yeah, it would make sense why, like they said, with the one, it's like, oh, she was a regular person hundreds of years ago. So the idea that, again, what you would know more readily, Craig, I know just being in the Inner Geekdom division directly, what was it? He was in there for 5 hours is what it was, and it turned into 5 years? Or was it 5 minutes? 5 hours.
It was 5 hours, 5 years.
Yeah. And that populated into 5 years. Obviously, it depends on where you pop back out.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would make sense. All right.
The thing on that throws me off is that Sylvie said that she needed to create the world from the memories of the person that she was enchanting. But if she was like a few hundred years old, she wouldn't have known what a margarita is.
Well, not necessarily. If it's outside of time and space, and she was pulled from 1997.
Oh,
she could have been working working with the TVA for hundreds of years because time doesn't really mean anything to them.
Yeah, that's fair. If you're subscribing to the theory that time is not linear and that everything is happening all time at the same time, that works.
Yeah.
But that's getting into theoretical and quantum physics conversation that we don't need to have on this show.
Nope. Nope, not that geeky.
All right.
What else?
Max Cohen. Nothing Sylvie said is backed with evidence beyond how enchantment works and C20 being stolen. So we can't say what she says is real. She's a Loki. I don't think any. Okay, this is the point that I was making earlier. No one is saying that she isn't a variant of Loki, but when someone decides to take control of their identity, they are the only one who gets to decide who and what they are. So if she decides that she does not want to be identified as Loki, she is Sylvie, plain and simple, then that makes it true for her. Mm-hmm. And that's one of that subtle part of the conversation that I loved about this episode, is that they weren't just like, hey, this is what we're trying to say. They just said it and moved on. And we're like, I said what I said, and I'm gonna move on.
I mean, look, I don't want to get into a Rachel Dolezal conversation, But how about the fact that like Loki himself actually being a frost giant does not like he'll bring it up every now and again, but
Yeah.
only is like, no, I am Loki of Asgard. Like I know he was raised Asgardian, but he's technically not physiologically Asgardian. He is a frost giant, and he refuses to like. He shows us his frost giant appearance once in Thor when he realizes what went on. And other than that, he never reverts back to that form ever. So it's the same concept. It can work. It works in the exact same way.
Well, I mean, if you could look like Tom Hiddleston or a frost giant, which would you choose?
I would choose Selvi because she's really hot and she can enchant people. And I feel like enchanting people is way doper than just being able to magically like put stuff in a pocket dimension. But that's just me. I personally.
That's fair. That's fair.
But
in terms of it was so also to the super chat, we were saying the only things that there's evidence for this and that, but I'd counter that with yes, but the only things that she said that there is evidence, we haven't seen anything that has evidence to the contrary from what she's saying. Everything that she said that there is evidence to supports what she said as saying.
Frankie Gouge donated $20. Honestly, don't think you can judge this episode until you see the next one.
I mean,
yeah,
that's a fair assessment. But I mean, and that's like when people were judging, WandaVision and Captain America and the Winter Soldier after episode 1 or episode 2. Like, you can't judge the series until you've seen the entire series.
Yeah, exactly.
It's true. The only thing I will say, because it's television and you're making a break in there, you kind of can, in the sense that they are standalone entities, but they are part of a larger whole. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like you can say like, hey, I didn't vibe with this episode, but you can't say, hey, Loki sucks, because
exactly
you haven't seen all of Loki. You don't know where it's going.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And like I said, this to some people this may have felt like a quote unquote filler episode, but even if it like they think it was of it as a filler episode, it's like we don't yet know how it will impact the remainder of the series. So and I think it's very likely that with the context of the rest of the episodes, we'll be able to get be able to rejudge this and how it fits in with the rest of the series. But I think we can adjust, as you said, judge this as an individual episode, and I still, for one, very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I did too. What else, Dwayne, or is that all of them?
I think that last one that came in. Hold on, let me refresh. Yep, that's it. We got them all.
Okay, so I'm very sad that we only got to have half an episode of the Barbarian here, because Craig is a brilliant mind, but I'm very excited in the fact that, so the kind of the big announcement is next week we're going to be changing up the format a little bit. We will still be doing the reviews. It won't take up the entirety of the episode, but we will be doing the reviews, the spoiler reviews of the episodes. We're going to kind of move into almost like a PTI-esque format where you're going to be getting all of the geeky news. So the stuff that you saw us doing in between the shows. So when Jonathan Majors gets cast as Kang in Ant-Man, we're going to break that down, stuff like that. We'll do timed segments on all that kind of stuff. So we'll dedicate a large chunk of the episode to these spoiler reviews, but we'll still give you that news in there as well, and our discussion and speculations. We'll have fun segments, and I don't think it starts next week. But very, very soon we will be in studio, which is going to be amazing as well. So you're going to get awesome in-person people meeting, graphics, all that good stuff. It is going to be a wild ride, as well as the show changing names. Again, do not want to reveal that quite yet, just because we need to hammer that out and finalize it, where we've got a couple ideas. Need to make sure that the bosses are okay with that. But that is what's coming for the INNERGEEKDOM show, and I'm so excited. It sounds like the time is going to shift from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Wednesdays. Once I have that fully verified, obviously with the show title, I will let y'all know about that for sure. So don't worry about that. But it is something that's going to be happening soon, and I'm very, very excited about it. Someone saying this was a filler review. That's funny, since obviously the story will be moving forward starting next week. So that is the exciting stuff that's coming on. Craig, real quick, tell them where they can find you and what you got going on, man.
You can find me on Twitter as @BarbarianCraig. And then I'm also on Instagram at CF Gaynier. C as in Craig, F as in Frank, Gaynier's Gaynier. So as in the French word to win. So all I do is win. And you can find me right now. We had a fun time last week shooting a promo for the home video release of Nobody. Nobody is out on video and on demand. And check out on Twitter. You can see the movie trivia Schmoedown posted, and I reposted it. The video of me and JTE working with stunt crew to reenact scenes from the film, and it was a ton of fun. And I thought the video came together really well. And then, you can always find me supporting the rest of the Finstock Exchange. We got 2 huge matches this week coming up. We got the Moose Haas taking on Amaru Moses tomorrow, and then the Tyrant Ty Lieberman taking on Josh Horowitz. And and you'll see me back in the ring soon. I don't know what I'm allowed to say, but we'll just say that Elvis has been taken out of the dust bag.
It's on and cracking, man.
Yeah.
And check out the thing that they did for Nobody, him and JT. That was so cool. If you haven't seen it already, I retweeted it. I know the Schmoedown tweeted it. I believe Craig tweeted it, but you have to see it. It was so cool what they did. Dwayne, tell them where they can find you, bro.
You can find me anywhere and everywhere on the internet at BurkeMade. Check out my YouTube channel for my show Technical Difficulties, where I do a bunch of tips, tricks, and tutorials to help make your live streams more engaging and more dynamic. And you can always find me on Twitch, kind of playing with things on stream. You get to see my mess ups live when I break things in OBS and fix them. And then also you can ask me, like, how do I do this? And I'll answer you if I can. So please come through.
That's what's up. And you know where to find me at the Swaggy Blurred. Here on the Inner Geekdom Show. Again, we are going to be moving times and changing the name, but don't worry, it's going to be nothing but goodness going forward. You can also find me at Blurs in the Hood Tuesdays and Thursdays, 2 p.m. Pacific, with my co-host, Mr. Jay Washington, the resident supervillain, and you can find me in about 2 minutes on SEN Live right here. So with that, everybody, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Please be sure to come back next week. Leave a like if you haven't already. Leave a comment. Do it on the podcast, all that good stuff. Got nothing but love for each and every one of you. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I'll see you in just a couple of minutes. Deuces. I like that, Craig, right here. Yo.
Yeah.